Hi, everyone. My name is Alexandria. I'm one of the coordinators for the Collabinar series this year. A little bit about the Collabinar series. The Collabinar series is a webinar event started by the Center for Community Systems and Science, where we invite researchers and our partners from across the globe to share their insights on their developments in research in community and citizen science. Today, we invited Muki Haklay, a professor from University College London, to share some insights from his experience teaching citizen science. So I will pass it over to Ryan and Heidi. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and then we will open discussion at the end.
Great. I'm sitting here trying to do something in the chat and I can't, so I'm sorry. Thank you so much for everybody joining us. I can't see quite everybody because we've got the screen shared, but I'm so glad to see everyone on the list of participants. And Ryan and I are sort of co-hosting this, and because we go, Muki Haklay has been I would say is a founding person of the field and has really been doing lots of thinking about how to professionalize citizen and community science and how to institutionalize it within our institutions and how to teach it, how to train people at various stages and levels of how to get at how to practice community and citizen science. Do we want to have people introduce themselves or do anything like that over there? I'm just noticing in the chat, I know we have a lot of people with a lot of expertise in this area, and the original idea of Collabinars was not just your standard presentation and questions and Q&A afterwards, but to really workshop the ideas that are presented in the presentation. So like Muki's got raising some of the challenges he's been facing as well, that we all are, kind of, I'm sure, facing in kind of trying to do this work. So with all the folks that are with us today with so much expertise, it'd be great to make sure that you feel like this is a place where you can problematize and bring up the challenges and issues and solutions and suggestions for Muki and the work, as well as just sort of Q&A about his presentation.
Totally agree. Yeah. So with that, I think we should turn it over to Muki to get started. But yeah, please do engage in the chat. We're looking forward to the discussion. And thank you so much, Muki, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for taking this time. It's Muki's 7 p.m. his time. So really appreciate your doing this with us at the time that is convenient for us. Thank you.
And thank you for the invitation. And I am sorry that I can't be with you at UC Davis. I'm going to talk for about 30 minutes, so we have time for questions and discussion around the things that I presented. And what I'm going to start is a little bit of background and kind of first steps on sharing knowledge about citizen science and how kind of the thinking about teaching citizen science came about. Then I'll cover the design of a postgraduate modules that we created at UCL called the Introduction to Citizen Science and Scientific Crowdsourcing, a whole set of training modules that we created in the EU Citizen Science platform over the past 2 years, and kind of finish with the designing of the program for an MSc in Citizen Science at UCL, and summary, and then addressing the issues, which are the kind of things that I thrown at the beginning of the webinar about why is it challenging to design teaching program for citizen science and community science, of course, why you can't avoid talking about philosophy, sociology, and politics of science when thinking about citizen science, and you need to teach them. And also, how can we create a training program that maintain the pluralistic understanding of citizen science? And I'll explain in a minute what exactly I mean by that, and also how to manage the ethical contradiction of professionalizing citizen science and thinking about who might be the loser. So let's start with the background. Where did I got into different teaching and what's the background to it? So I've been doing participatory action research for a very long time. I started with it, you see me there in the during my PhD, doing things around public participation, GIS, kind of participatory approaches to involve community in accessing environmental information. And I learned by doing. I actually was lucky to work very closely to Caroline Harrison and to Judy Clark and other people in the Environment and Society Research Unit that kind of taught me how to approach a community and engage with them. I was also learning from things like OpenStreetMap, where, for example, when I gave a talk about how researchers should work with it, my first rule of it is do some mapping. You can only understand OpenStreetMap by joining the activity, do something. Don't just research something as social scientists do from outside. So I was seeing it as something that it's instrumental to the way that you understand things, and it's also fundamental to understanding the theory with practice as a way to assist learners to understand concepts and practices. And I was starting to do it in different cases. So the timeline kind of the thing that I'm going to cover in the talk is that around 2007-8, in terms of the research, although I was knowing about the bucket brigade since my PhD in 98, 99, it was only in 2007-8 that finally I had the opportunity and the funding and everything in place to carry out community and citizen science in noise mapping and later on in air quality mapping. Then by 2010, I was starting to give talks and seminars about citizen science. In 2011, I was already integrating citizen science into lecture on crowdsourced geographical information as part of degree in civil engineering. I was also giving a public lecture by 2013. So you need to kind of think about a wider audience, and you are very aware at the time that people don't know even what the term means. By 2016, I started the idea about developing the MSc in citizen science that we'll talk more about. But then on a way to that, by 2017, it was the design of the postgraduate module that I'll talk more about. And finally, about 2 years ago, as part of a European project, we started developing self-taught model. And between all that, there is, of course, informal teaching of MSc students, PhD students, lectures, all kind of talks. So what kind of things I learned from all that? And to my luck, I was giving hundreds of talks about citizen science and about my activities around it. And my assumption was that in order to explain to people what I was doing, which we called extreme citizen science, and I won't cover it within this talk exactly, it's for another talk completely. But in order to explain what this extreme citizen science, first of all, you need to explain what citizen science is. Otherwise, people don't know where you're coming from or what it is. And most of the audience, I would assume, and it's still true today, never heard about citizen science. And that's true for public audience, and it's absolutely true even for academic audience. Maybe in ecology, you would expect nowadays for them to know the terms, but in most fields, they won't have the background to it. And even when people heard about it, they will likely got the limited, or as I would call, the wrong concept about it. And you'll see why I'm calling it the wrong concept, because it will be narrow and disciplinary and not wide. And learning is actually very complex, because if you want to learn properly, it is actually a socio-scientific technical object that you are trying to teach people. You need to understand software, ICT infrastructure, data management, data quality, volunteer management, ethics of volunteer management, engagement, recruitment, inclusiveness, and then you got all the disciplinary stuff that come within it. And therefore, it's quite a lot of things to teach and pass to someone. In addition to that, there is a lot of, because of the principle that I talked just in the last slide, there is also learning by doing, because without it, you won't be able to think like a participant. So actually, when I'm looking at the very early talks and presentation that I was trying to explain to people about this whole area of extreme citizen science, and you see there, for example, the 2011 example, you see the original scale that I presented, typology, which later on I moved from the triangle behind it, because it's kind of give the impression that there is a value judgment towards the top, still there, but you're trying to avoid it. and kind of trying to explain it. But what happened with all that is that I was going around and I'm trying to find a way to express where this extreme citizen science sit, and in order for that to talk about the other areas of citizen science and also experience from the public participation GIS, which was marginalized inside the general GIS science or geographic information science community, was that you need to be pluralistic. You need to appreciate that all modes of activities are respected and important. And it was also clear to me through the different talks on citizen science that if someone is contributing CPU cycles on their computer and someone else is involving in all the processes, there is no difference. They are contributing to science and everything should be appreciated. So slowly that evolved into forms of explaining citizen science. So for example, I've understood also that I need to make sure, as I said, that everything should be included. That's what I mean by pluralistic approach to it, and kind of saying everything from ecology to meteorology to things that was going on many years, to things that happening only on computers, to things that people are building themselves, finding a way to bring in the bucket brigade, the public club, the Zooniverse, and SETI at home, all within one framework, because actually that's when people will start understanding what is citizen science and the potential of it in different areas. And also the kind of explanation, like my point, and I'm mentioning it in different places, about the increased level of education. So you see there another kind of diagram that I've been using to explain to people. So through the different talks, I developed slowly a way to communicate, and the lucky thing, I was able to iterate on them. So to see when people understand them and when they don't. So that led to the first kind of the introduction to citizen science and scientific crowdsourcing course, which was suggested in 2017 for a start in January 2018, which is actually quite a fast turnaround. But remember that by that stage, I was presenting and talking about citizen science for 5 to 7 years. And what it was decided is actually to make it into an MSc module, because it's not suitable to undergraduate. And within UCL Geography, which I moved to partially to run this course, there was an MSc in Conservation, there is an MSc in Environment and Politics and Society, MSc in Climate Change, and so on. So it's very suitable for all these areas to find something within this topic. And UCL 15 credit units are something like 10 weeks of studies, 2 hours lectures, 1 hour practical, so doing something and that's the learning by doing opportunity, and 2 assignments of 1,500 words, so you have you can map it to your system. But from the start, I thought that this must be an open course. So the course must be available online for anyone to access, because if we are investing in this, one way to make it inclusive and benefit from the resources that UCL is providing for this course is to make all the material accessible online, so anyone can access it. They won't get the credits, but they can get the material. And therefore, it was also suitable for online learning in addition to class-based learning. And it also was useful to demonstrate that there is an interest in citizen science to the rest of the UCL community. And the whole process of creating a course and talking with people about it is influencing the institution and make the term appearing in different documents. So, for example, at the department level, at the faculty level, other levels are coming in. The course itself is actually structured in an upside down structure, because again, I understood that you can't start with theory because students won't have any background to understand what they are talking about. So what you start is with a lot of examples and the history about citizen science, and then you are providing a general introduction regardless of the field of study of the students, because I'll have students that coming out from different fields. By the way, I'm running through the slides very fast, but immediately after this talk, I will give you all the slides as PDF, so you can use them in any form you want. So what's the structure of the course? If you log into it, and anyone on this talk can log into it, it's available on a system called UCL Extend. You will see that we start with kind of the building blocks. So the part one is the history, typologies. So we're looking at three typologies. We're talking about crowdsourcing as a specific area, and environmental citizen science, because that's one of the major areas in citizen science. In part two, I'm talking about what I call the data quality monster, because that monster will appear whenever you talk about citizen science, data management, digital technology design, and volunteer management. So the practical skills that you need to understand to run project, or if someone not running a project, they'll understand the complexity of it. And then once you have that understanding, we can go into the ethics, policy, evaluation, philosophy of science, social theory. So the more theoretical part. And we start with a hands-on activity of the Zooniverse penguins, which is one of the easiest projects to do, going all the way to app design by the end of the course. So again, you get a lot of areas. The assignments, one part of it is technology design, so more human-computer interaction, which is one of the technical skills that is useful in other areas of life. And then the second part is the theory and the practice. So you take a project and then you write 1,500 words on the base of all the structure. The preparation, each class, will have a preparation video. So say a TED Talk by Karen Cooper is the first part that students see in the introduction. In the reading, we got something called core, additional, and deep dive. So the core reading you have to read, and it's fairly short. The additional are things that I expect to see when you're doing the assignments. And the deep dive is, say, if someone wants to use it for a dissertation, they can get in. Then the lecture itself is broken into 3 or 6 parts of 10 minutes, plus minus. And then there is quizzes and other things that are available only online for reflection. So it's not, again, it's not marked. Remember that you can get grade on it only if you do the course within UCL, but for anyone else, they can access it this way. And all the slides and the text available online for anyone to download the news. The lessons itself from the development of it is, first of all, it surprised me, and it still surprised me, how much material there is about teaching citizen science. And that's because there is the whole history of the different areas that created it. And even when you go 30 contact hours, it's not enough to teach everything that you can think about it. Curating the reading list is challenging, and you just see there 2 examples of the reading list. And there is so much literature in this area that it's really difficult to decide what are the key things that you need to read. In fact, I managed to do only marginal flipped elements. So kind of telling the students, watch the whole course online and then we'll do some activity in class. Actually, the place where we've done mostly, I was covering most of the lectures and then maybe telling them to look at 1 or 2 parts online. And the students prefer it this way. But the hands-on experience with multiple projects, kind of progressively giving the students different projects, worked really well. The creating an open course is available online is very hard. I don't even do it again. Probably I'll end up doing it again, but it requires 3, 4, 4 month time, the effort of doing the class, class only delivery. On the other end, as you'll see, it's been very lucky at the last point, because we had to teach online, especially during the COVID-19, and the course was available. However, the standard that you need to prepare your material are much higher, and you need to kind of think about the text and the context and the recording talks and making them accessible, kind of not just talking over PowerPoint, which is what's available, is actually quite difficult. And I hope that in the future, I can update it with a bit better studio editing. But that's the way it is. That's the resources that are available. I can't say that it's perfect as the courses say that the Open University creates, but it's doing its job quite well. We had already over 2,000 people kind of logging to it online, and it's been replicated in a university in the Czech Republic and so on. So part 2 is to talk about the EU citizen science training modules. So what is EU Citizen Science? EU Citizen Science, if you'll type in that into the URL, you'll get to a website that it's a reference point. They allow knowledge sharing about citizen science across Europe. It was funded by the European Commission, and it's aimed at providing us with resources and training resources for different purposes. The platform itself is providing a space to share, initiate, and learn citizen science in multiple languages, and it's currently owned by the EXA, by the European Citizen Science Association, but we had a very large consortium that was doing that. So in practical terms, the platform itself is available for sharing. So you see at the top level there, for example, different resources. So you can get a training sheet, or you can find a project or guidance or anything else. And some of the resources are training resources that you can download, but in addition to that, we created a whole section of the website that is based on Moodle, the same system that UCL Extend is using. It's an open source learning environment. And we wanted to create on that self-learning 1.5 to 2 hours free training courses on citizen science, and that was described in the project. And in the EU, when you write it into the project, it's commitment that you need to deliver on. So how we designed it. So I already had experience from developing the course at UCL, which I went to it into the project with this knowledge, but also we looked specifically at the Open University, which got a system called Open Learn, and they've got a really excellent course on how to make an open online course and how to create open learning material. And also because of COVID, UCL pivoted into online teaching, so it created a whole set of learning and guidance for staff on how to do it on a lower level. So assuming that the students, that you can't fulfill the full standards of creating outdoor videos and editing of them and spend huge amount of time, you need to pivot quite quickly. So there were all kind of useful shortcuts within the UCL suggestion. So we took both of them and we kind of thought, out of that, we won't think about the whole course, we'll think about the specific learning modules that are, as I said, fairly short. They have kind of a clear indication of what they're supposed to do, that they need to be controlled and they need to be on 1.5 hours and they need to be self-guided by the student. So we created standardized structure for the course that will make it easier for developers. We created system for peer review of course outline. We shared best practices guidelines. We shared specific use of tools for better interactivity, something called H5P. We created a 40-page guidelines for course developer, and that's a live document that has been improving. You see it on the side. And we tested 2 lectures that we took from the UCL course. So the very first lectures, introduction and the typologies, was taken over and was tested as the structure. So what is the process of designing a module? That was, first of all, gap analysis and survey of need to demonstrate that that course is really missing. Module design and looking at the best practice guidelines, then developing a detailed guideline document and created a template. All that is available openly. Again, if someone wants to take those design tools that we created, you can use them. They have the legacy of coming from the Open University and UCL. Then you have iterative process with feedback on early design, mid-design, and learner testing. We actually integrated testing on 5 users because that's matched Nielsen concept on web usability, that you'll get about 80% of the error. And then we also had weekly support surgeries with some of the members of the team, especially Abriel, who is on the call here, Alice Shepard, and Nadia Reckman, who were contributing to those surgeries. 1 hour when people can call in and get support. And the draft model were designed and tested and then only then been released. And the standard structure was that all the courses will always have welcome and introduction. They'll have 4 or 6 to 6 sections because that's something that a learner can find reasonable, and also we calculated that the timing is about right. Conclusion and self-assessment, so if someone wants to get a badge, an accreditation for the course, they can get it, and sources and acknowledgement. So that's what it looks like. That, like this one that I created called Introduction to Journalists. So you see that in each section, as in best practice, it's telling you how long it is. In each part, there is a progression, there is a tick box for the students to mark the progression, and there are lots of interactive parts. Like, for example, you can see here 2 examples. First of all, a slideshow that if you look carefully, you see that as you progress through the slideshow, you actually see exactly which page you are on. So this is the case, the story about Moonwatch, just to tell early stories on citizen science. And then you can also see on the left bottom, the interactive quiz where you drag words. So that's what this H5P is enabling. So it's HTML5 processing or practical, something like that. But it's really providing nice tools to create interactivity for the learner. And in the end, we had 24 training modules that were created by the team at UCL. We could support different languages, which was really great because that means that the platform is hosting courses in say in Slovak or in Hungarian, where they don't have platform in their country to run it, and looking at social inclusion in different ways. The code development of the training material was really effective way of co-developing it with the community. And when we look at the statistics of people accessing it, what we've seen is that even in March, the project kind of ended last year. Lots of time you have the ability to promote it during the course, but we see a continual use. And what is interesting is that the courses are available for anyone to access them as a guest. So you don't need to enroll or register. You can just look at the courses without registering. And if you want to progress with the marking and with the guidelines and other things, you can do it as a student. And actually we see that there is good access to the system on both levels, and people are happy just to look around. So what's the lesson? The lesson that creating a good open course, even if it's just 2 hours, is again, hard work. And it's about 3 to 4 weeks of work. You know, it's something like, I would say 2 full weeks after you know what you're doing. The functionality is interesting, but require, of course, extra learning on how to use it. Guiding other people to develop the training require extra effort, and that was really important. Both the training surgery and the good practice and other things were a lot of work, but it was very helpful in providing these guidelines, and now we know that the guidelines are quite good. Maintaining performances, the platform, even when it's open source software that it's actually robust, Moodle is really robust environment to use, is again, a lot of work and represent its own challenges like the integration of passwords between that and the main system and so on. So that's something that to know there is no free lunches in that the ICT infrastructure is just as important. So finally, I'll talk a little bit about our new MSc in citizen science. So the background is, of course, we know that the field, citizen science, community science, public participation in scientific research, whatever we want to call it, is the active public engagement in scientific project has been increasing very rapidly. And it's happened across all academic areas. And I'm now having a joke because I've came across so many cases, is that you can ask me about the field and I'll tell you a citizen science project in this area. And because you see it now even in social sciences, in a lot of other areas. And of course, there is a lot of early adoption in ecology and conservation, where the term in some ways originated. So who might need the people within this area? People who work in science museum, in zoos, in science center. We know about those places that are already running. Environmental authorities are running more and more in the EU. There are now increasing requirement to use citizen science. universities are opening centers for citizen science, NGOs or that been running citizen science would be happy probably to get people that are more trained to that. We see it in public health area. So for example, the Southern Denmark University Hospital is actually running a citizen science activity, and there are PhD candidates who want to learn it and to do it. So the opportunity came from the fact that UCL was building a new campus in the Olympic Park in London. So you see the two buildings in the background. Those are our new buildings that UCL will complete in the next 2-3 years, and they will available to run different projects. And there is a lot of MSc courses that have been developed in that. So that gave the opportunity to develop the course as part of a new center that it's now called People and Nature Lab. So it's running through bioscience and life science. So the goal of the course is to train professionals in the field of citizen science and scientific crowdsourcing so they can design, run, and manage projects successfully. The course is aimed for people with different areas of research and either with undergraduate degree or with experience of running the project. And that was the original purpose of the course, which kind of shifted, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So the original structure of it, and you can see it here online, was the idea that remember my principle of learning by doing. So a major part of the course, the 30 credit units, is something they call secondment. So join a project and you will be part of a citizen science project. And because we have so many of them in London and in the kind of wider southeast area of England, we can actually send people, I imagine, that will send someone who is interested in doing things with Universe, just go and be with them for the whole period. And we will pay actually part of the tuition fee to the hosting organization because a lot of time it's NGOs and otherwise this is not equitable. But also what will happen is that the students will be guided through different chapters. So say in the first chapter, in the first 3 weeks, they will have to think about what's the background of the project that I'm joining? What happened before I joined? What kind of the understanding? The second part, say, will be about how this project manage data quality. The third part will be how the students manage volunteers. How the projects manage volunteers, and so on and so forth. So actually they will learn different things that match their theoretical learning. And then we have the kind of a course about the introduction to citizen science and crowdsourcing. So similar to the course that you've seen, but with much more depth about getting into different disciplines and explaining the different aspects. Then another course about organizational aspects, technology and methodology. So for example, understanding how to analyze citizen science data because we know that it's different, and then doing an elective course and doing a big dissertation project. So that was my original hope for the course. What happened to it, of course, it's gone into the different processes, resources that are available, limitation of what is possible within the People and Nature Lab and within the processes at UCL. And what it is now, it's actually quite different, and it's got a much more strength in the area of ecology. So what happened now is that the practice of citizen science placement, just the same as I described to you. We will be able to allocate students to originally, actually the relationship are with the Zoological Society for London and the Natural History Museum in London. So that emphasis is there, but it's possible to work with other organizations. The foundation of citizen science is the basics course, the same as the introductory course. And then the second course in the second term is the designing and managing citizen science, where we will need to plug in all the technological design, the volunteer management, the ethics, the policy, all these parts. The methodology course is now replaced with computational method for biodiversity research, which means that we will need to think if we'll start getting more students, say, in public health and in social science and other things, we'll have to find a way to support them. There is an optional module, and then there is the dissertation project. In a bit more detail, here are the different courses. So what students got to do is the foundation of citizen science, where we will cover the different theoretical roots of the area, and we will kind of go through each discipline. So that will continue to be a very wide and pluralistic course in its aspect. The computational method will start, if we're planning to start with small number of students, so that will be very much focused on ecological aspects, but afterwards we might be able to replace the second half with dedicated course for citizen scientists. And then the designing and managing, which I described to you already. The optional courses, you see that they are, again, from the area of ecology, AI and for the environment, ecology and nature, plant evolution, and so on. That's because of the constraint on designing the course through the UCL system and the fact that it's owned by bioscience. And our projects are at the moment either by UCL or by the Zoological Society of London. So there is one thing that we insisted on creating, and that's because the course is actually part of the professionalization of citizen science. And you have a lot of people that actually have experience in the field, but don't have a degree, and maybe don't even have an undergraduate degree, but been writing, say, papers because they've been, I think that the equivalent in your case is master ecologist or something like that. You've got terms for that, like that exists within the extension that I learned about. Or other things. In the UK, we have people that been looking after specific moths or other things for many years and even published academic papers on that, but don't necessarily have a degree. So they need to have a routine, because otherwise, as the area gets professionalized and maybe also get a better type of jobs, they will be left out. So for them, there is a special pathway that they can submit a 3,000 words document that demonstrates that academically they are proficient enough, and therefore they can join the course and do it. The problem, of course, will be the tuition fee. That's something that, again, I have a very limited ability to influence the system, and there are systems for application. Maybe NGOs will be able to support them. The cost for UK students is £19,000, and for overseas students is £32,000, which is fairly high. And that's coming from the way UCL operate, of course. And it's expecting to generate this income through the course. After all, they wouldn't let it happen otherwise. So what have I learned? So let's look at the question that I've presented as a way to summarize and to finish. So why is this challenging? I would argue that the problem is that it doesn't belong to a scientific discipline, to a specific scientific discipline, sorry for the typo there, but university units are. And courses and activities are happening within university units. So while there is freedom to say, do things on the modules in new citizen science, for both the MSc and the course, there are all kinds of constraints that are coming from this aspect. And most of the audience is also not familiar with the term, regardless of which term we use, community science, whatever we want to use, nobody knows that. And the fact that it's a socio-scientific technical system just complicate things. And it's make it both challenging and interesting to teach, but it's also making to design it and to design which niche of it you are going to teach, because you can't teach everything. Now, why can't we avoid talking about those issues of philosophy, sociology, politics, and so on? The reason for that, it's actually they are sneaking into projects. So medical project will have randomized control trial. Ecological project will have transact. The methodology and approach and way of thinking of the discipline will get into the project. And if we are looking across citizen science project, even the ethics and even the publications are actually following a lot of disciplinary guidelines, and you need to teach it to students. Now, students, for example, a lot of time are surprised when I'm getting to the lecture about epistemology, ontology, and methodology, because for people from the natural sciences, they never covered this type of topic, but even with people from social sciences, with a bit more theoretical background, I still find it interesting because they see an example that they can work through. And understanding the mismatch of context help in thinking and doing citizen science properly. So how can we create a training program that's pluralistic? So you see that I'm coming from the pluralistic side of citizen science, and that's the issue that I said, what I mean by wrong concept of citizen science. It's not fair to say that it's wrong. People who are coming from ecology and thinking about citizen science are justified, and it's appropriate for them to think about their citizen science. The fact that I'm thinking about all citizen science is my problem, not their problem. And you need to think about it when you're designing teaching program, especially one that are open. So providing examples, hands-on experience, reading, and designing the teaching around it can support this practice of plurality and teaching people at least that there are different ideas around it. And finally, the ethical consideration of the professionalization. The little that can be done is the pathways, and then trying to work through grants and through support of people to get scholarship if we'll get to this stage in the course. If you want to find more information about the things that I've just mentioned, you can just Google. If you'll Google UCL Extend Citizen Science, you'll find the course. EU Citizen Science, you'll immediately find the platform, and the UCL MSc in Citizen Science, you can find it too. So that's me, and I'll be very happy to spend the next 15 minutes plus, or how long we want on a discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're clapping here in the room, and maybe unshare your screen if that's possible. Awesome.
And voila.
And voila. And if anybody wants to get on video, that would be awesome. If people want to jump in and join the conversation. I'm seeing some clapping hands. That's wonderful. And thank you so much, Muki. We have about a little over 10 minutes. We could go, 12 minutes. Do folks have, I found lots of things interesting and resonating with me, and I'm sure we all did. And so, but I don't know, Ryan, if you want to ask anything in particular to start us off, or if you would like to let folks from the audience join in and ask some questions.
I'm not seeing any hands. Please use the hand function, given how many folks we have. And while people find that, I will ask a question. Actually, I'm interested in one particular facet, which is the hands-on experiences that you want to provide for folks, and how that might be in tension with the desire for a pluralistic understanding of citizen science. Because it seems to me that some kinds of projects are much more amenable to the short-term engagement that students might have than others, right? Others that might be these sort of longer-term, community-driven, co-created kinds of projects. It's very hard to drop someone into an environment like that. So how do you get the full breadth of understanding, but then are you constrained in the experiences that folks get? So
you're absolutely right. What I can do in class within an hour is click on penguins, do eyes on outs or whatever, stall catcher type activity. So it's a bit more difficult. Go home and do some volunteer computing. That kind of activity is suitable. And we can actually, towards the end of the term, we are guiding people to do City Nature Challenge. And even encourage them to kind of do something in their local park. Maybe they find, a local group to do it with and things like that. The co-created, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's really difficult, but the way I'm sorting it is basically bringing guest speakers who have done that, who can talk with the students about their experience. Over the past 10 years, I was lucky because I had the funding to run the Extreme Citizen Science group. And there was always an anthropologist that came from the field and could talk. In this case, we had a PhD student that came a week after being for a year and a half in Cameroon and in Congo, and could talk about his experiences and kind of answer a lot of questions. Yeah, and actually I also, in terms of the pluralistic aspect, I also now recommend people who are starting not to jump to co-creation. Like, they can cause damage, and anyone who's done participatory action research, you know that this very close hand-holding and mentoring is crucial to get it wrong. In the UK, I told Heidi, like, my line about it is that you can lose a community with the wrong packet of biscuits. So in the UK, because it's class-based society, if you go to a community with a Marks and Spencer, which is an expensive brand, you know, and you walk into the community and you don't know what you're doing, and you kind of behave as if that's the natural biscuits that you are, you know, that you're supposed everyone to eat, you might get into all kind of trouble. And that's kind of things that without joining something and doing the whole process, you won't understand it. And I don't think that will any, if we have the full MSc, then we might be able to guide people through that in their dissertation project, because then they have enough time. And even then, I'll be very, very careful about doing that, just because the risk of harm.
And I was going to add, with the things that you said that is like the inverse of what I've done, is you've talked about having guest speakers come, and that way people can get experience. You know, it's kind of hands-on-ish, but what I do in my participatory action research class is ask the students to conduct interviews with potential community partners. So that sort of it's like an experience of trying to do the participatory thing, and also hits your point about learning by doing, in terms of getting into the perspectives, understanding the perspectives of, you know, the participants of whatever, you know, kind of project you're thinking about. So that's also a way to kind of have, if it's very hands-on in the way it feels in trying to have a conversation, right? And then in an interview where you have to kind of write it up and talk about it afterwards. There's Malin, you've got a question with your hand up there.
I do. Thanks, everyone. This is really, I just had a clarification, I guess, Muki. Thanks for sharing your ideas and insight. It seemed like one of the syllabi, you had a different, like that the students could choose a different project that would get more maybe change over time, and they participate in a different way throughout the course. Did I understand that in another approach, you've also had them choose a single project that might be more in their discipline, and then stick with that and kind of use that to reflect on the different topics? Can you expand on that a little bit? I'm just interested about that.
Yeah, okay. So there are two things. Like, first of all, we have in the MSc structure, there is this placement, secondment aspect. And while early on, we might be more limited in that students can contact us in advance and say, I want digital humanities project, that will kind of reach out and match them. The second place, even in the smaller course, in the way that I'm running currently, the course, the one, you know, the module for MSc students, actually they got freedom in the assignment to do that. And the assignment is actually a big part of the course, and they are free to pick up any project that they want. They need to reflect on the epistemology and the methodology and all this kind of aspects of the project, and then to think how it plays out in the specific case, and what general elements they can learn about it, what they can find about demographic of the course, the project, what they find about data quality, because that's true for any project, and so on. So they actually can do that. And we did have students, for example, coming from digital anthropology and from chemistry, and then selecting project for that. Or even, as I said, I'm kind of now have this catalog of different projects from different areas. So I'm telling the students, if you want a project on a specific area, just shout, and I'll direct you into several projects, and then pick up and specialize on that. And then you can use this additional reading and, you know, the deep dive and all the rest of it.
Thank you. I see we have several more questions. I've got is it Shyam, and then
Yeah.
Daniela, and then we have Anna put on something in the chat. So maybe let's try and at least get one more in with our 5 minutes left, and Daniela, maybe we can get you, maybe think about putting your question in the chat if if needed. Thank you. Shyam?
Yeah. Okay, thank you for your talk. So when for my elective course, I used to give the assignment to my student, take any either INET or SEEK or the Global Observer, and at the end of the semester, I need to look your profile, how much the data you contributed, what kind of your profile tell, and then I give them assignment apart from my theoretical part, what I learned from your book and from your lecture. So that is a good idea to engage them. Is it right way, or what you say?
I don't know.
You have any further suggestions?
Yeah, I think depending on the level of the students and the practices of teaching, so we don't check on them how many they are doing, but on the other end, we're doing it in class, and actually it's very important in the practical that there is peer learning. So we're putting the students together, because it's actually interesting that even though, say, Zooniverse was created for people to do it alone, when two people are sitting together, they can learn from each other. Or when they are stuck on starting to map in OpenStreetMap, which we also use in another module, in another, practical, they can also learn together. So it's more the experiential stuff and kind of telling them, you want to do more, do it after. I'm not, but that's because I've got MSc students, and I'm going back to the point about the amount of material. I'm feeling very guilty that I'm just throwing at them so much material that maybe I'm overwhelming them with the amount of material. So I want them to have time to absorb the material, to go back to the course, to look at the comment. What I can say from the assignments, this theoretical assignment, they show quite good understanding of the field, and that's something to do within those 10 weeks, which I think it's all I'm expecting. I have low expectations of how much we can transfer, but it is challenging. It's understanding the challenge of it. I can see, for example, for you, or I know from other projects, especially we're working with undergraduates, it will be really helpful to actually check that they are doing something practical, that they have used iNaturalist, and they can base their understanding on that.
Yeah. Before my course, there is no data on iNaturalist from the Nalanda district. Now we have 2,000 data of the biodiversity, and 700 species was done in the last 4 semester by my student from the one district. That's a great achievement for at least now we have a biodiversity of the Nalanda just because of the citizen science course.
Thank you very much. I can see how being able to check on the undergrads would be useful in that way in some cases. So Daniela has a question also, and we have 2 minutes. And I wonder, Daniela, do you wanna try and do yours verbally, or I see you just put it in the chat also?
I could just quickly, if I might. Thank you, Muki. This was wonderful. And I just wanted to reiterate that from my experience with upper division undergrads, that one of the key challenges is helping them to see expertise in a broader sense, because it is going against everything else in their training at the university. And so that becomes this constant challenge and problem for them in understanding the breadth of participatory science. And that's it. I'll stop there. But and so the challenges that you laid out at the end of your talk are so correct in my experience. So thank you.
Thank you.
And
I'm glad that it's matched. You know, that our experience match.
Well,
yes, that's also why I start with those historical examples of kind of, here's lots of examples, and I even kind of, one of my historical example is Mary Anning, and I'm actually making the point that she was excluded because of gender, because of religion, and all the rest of it, to make the point about that. So it's kind of evolving them. It's not in your face, I would say. I'm kind of doing that as part of an example, but I think they have enough examples to see how it works.
Yeah, that's a great point, Muki. I think sometimes I don't include the history as much as I should, and you're right, it gets across a lot of your key messages. I realize as you're saying it, it gets across those key messages about lots of areas of expertise by using those historical examples. I really appreciate that. And I was just going to say that also, Anna's question is about looking at the parallel efforts for using your course design blueprints all across Europe. And I was thinking to close, that's sort of one of the things I was wondering is, Muki, if we can stay in touch, if this group, this unit of people that have all joined in today, it seems like these conversations are, lots of people are trying different things all around the world, and you've tried to set up some really codified, some suggested structures, and it looks like we can get to those blueprints based on what you've said.
Absolutely. All the material that I talked about, I said I'll share the presentation. I'm sharing the slides. If anyone wants all this, like if you go to UCL Extend and actually you want the PowerPoint presentation that I've used to create the UCL Extend, just ask me and I give you. That's how it works with the Czech example that I mentioned to you about, which was lucky because someone from the group deleted the slides that we had on our backup.
Oh
and
my God.
and the fact that it was with this person in the Czech Republic, she sent it back and I have my backup back.
Thank you.
Leaving that aside, yeah, I'm giving everything away.
Thank you.
Great.
So I can attest.
Everything that you want from this presentation, anyone who needs it can get it.
Well, thanks very much, Muki.
Yeah.
And thanks everyone for joining. I want to say one other particular thank you, which is to Alex, the
Yes,
student
for
who's
sure.
been helping us with this series. This is the last one of the spring quarter, and I think
Okay.
probably the last one for Alex, who's graduating in June. So
Oh, thank you
early
very
congrats.
much.
Congratulations.
And thank you all for tuning in. We will continue probably 1 or 2 sessions in the summer, so stay tuned for that. Still working on scheduling and whatnot. And we're
Yeah.
always open to ideas if you want to present something, discuss something, or have ideas about speakers that you'd like to see. We'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We would love to hear from you. Thank you so much, Ryan, for this as well. Thank you, Muki.
Bye.
Buddy, thanks again.
Good to sort of see some folks virtually.
Bye.
There's Sarah. Hey, Sarah. Bye, Daniela. Daniela left.
Bye.
Hi, Heidi. Hi, Ryan. Hi, everybody. Bye.
Oh,
Bye.
I'm sorry.
Sarah.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Shannon. Let's see.